Hello, good morning. Fáilte, isteach in my van féin. Welcome to my van. I'm in Youghal, County Cork, which is about 20 miles from where I was yesterday at Pulla Graveyard, and doing a reconnaissance on a cemetery in Youghal that, as I understand it, should have some famine graves in it, but I haven't been there before, so I'm gonna go in there this morning and just have a walk around. And I'm testing this technology to see, does it work with the live streaming? Am I keeping the signal and so on? Now, before we get to the graveyard down in the town proper, I just wanted to stick my head in here and have a look at this particular spot. It's part of Youghal Golf Club, and it's actually a graveyard as well. So I think we're in Youghal lands. I think that's what this townland is called, and it's up the top high part of Youghal. And if I can disconnect this, we'll get out for a minute. What do I do there? I stick him on there, do I? Machine. Okay. We're dangling now. Okay. Alright, that's working. So this is part of the golf course, and it's a fantastic golf course. It's a great setting. And this here, I don't play golf, but like, that's a green, is it? Can't see a golf hole on it. If we walk around the outside, there's a sign on the wall over here, nice red sandstone wall. We're in that part of Munster where it's carboniferous red sandstone. What's that? Meters, 316 meters. And here, Society of Friends Burial Ground. So I guess this rectangular space here, from that wall there behind me over to there, this is the Quaker burial ground in Youghal. And it's under a golf green. I don't know how long it's been like that, but it is interesting. Youghal has a very interesting history. In relation to the arm wrestle between the different Christian traditions. And I know the Quakers were a part of that. That there was a strong Quaker population in Youghal. I have to take this lead off now. How did I do that? And I imagine it was a moderately complex relationship. Cooperation, collaboration, competition, all that kind of carry on. And somehow, in the heat of the hunt, what happened is the Quaker burial ground has ended up under a golf green. Good or bad? I don't know. Doesn't sound great to me, but these things happen. And it's a kind of a theme, I think, that we'll find all over the country. The way in which we bury our people. Now, that's at the back territory of Youghal Workhouse. Youghal Workhouse premises are in here on our left. As I go left here now, that became Asylum, and way at the back of that there's an Asylum graveyard, which I'll go into some other day. The Asylum graveyard is very interesting because it seems to comprise mostly single graves in those kind of institutional burial grounds that when the patients died they got their own little grave to themselves, and you can actually see the individual dips for each of those graves, and that is it's a very interesting place to go and visit. When I went in there first I was thinking, well, if it's back of the workhouse property, had it workhouse burials, and even then as an extension did it have famine workhouse burials. The thing is, the workhouse back behind us now wasn't built until, or it wasn't open proper until 1850, so the brunt of the famine probably gone by then. So it certainly won't have those 1847, those black 47 overwhelmed graves, but it should have burials from after 1850. We need to get a historian to look at that for us. And I suppose that's the point I wanted to make this morning. Like, I'm an archaeologist. I'm not a historian. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to apply archaeological approaches and methods. That lovely, as Youghal Bay below us. We're trying to apply archaeological methods to the 19th century and the 20th century. Contemporary archaeology, it's called. Medieval town walls over on our right. Heading downhill. And in applying archaeological approaches and methods of thinking to the 19th and 20th century, you have to work with historians. There's far more nuanced things going on in history than my training allows me to handle anyway. What's this, Cork Hill? Yeah, this is Cork Hill. So I guess that was the old road out of Youghal heading for Cork, or one of them anyway. Here we go. Now we're coming down onto the lower part into Youghal proper. So to our left there was an old Dominican Friary, and that's now a major cemetery area. It's got the old medieval graveyard, it's got a cemetery, and it might well have famine related graves inside it. So that's where I'm heading to. Broderick's hardware shop, very good in there. You can see Youghal has a lovely stock of 19th century buildings. It's a real hidden gem. Don't tell anybody about it, it's a fabulous place. We come here for our shopping and things, and it's just, people are great, the facilities are very good. Now, I'm going up here now. I don't know what it's going to be like. I haven't been in yet now properly on my own. Oh, it's busy. Alright, there's people in visiting graves already. Really squeeze in. Might be too tight. Gate's locked. Okay, we'll detach this fella now and we'll walk in here. How does that work? Put him on there, he's magnetic. You're missing your shot, Johnny. Okay, and he's on. Connect that, lad. Double click. Double click. Okay, you can see the modern graves along here. Grey overcast. Still a nice warm morning. Our Lady of Grace's stations across around the boundary wall. I better show you. I guess people would do the stations across as they walk around the graveyard. But there, those tall ruined buildings, that'll be the part of the Dominican Friary. There's the stations that are across. Curved graves, very 20th century feature, and we continue it today. Didn't really have curved graves into the 20th century, unless you had a lot of money, because you had to pay for the headstone and then you had to pay for the stone for the curb. Whereas as we got a bit more prosperous coming into the 20th century, and as people had access to funds, very much your 19th century graveyard over here. Those very fine, tall, decorated limestone tablets, if we call them that. Beautifully done medieval buildings. This is your standard Irish graveyard, this section, but then it's had to be extended up behind, over beyond and all over there. Well, this is interesting here. So this is a pair of you can call them chest tombs or box tombs. Brick in that one and stone, and then a brick vault there. And the, can I focus in there? Can I get exposure right in there? There's the burial chamber inside. You can see this has probably been open. How access was got to these was that you would have dug out the equivalent of a grave there to reveal steps down, and then the coffin would go in straight into that. Probably 19th century, maybe early 19th century. Uninscribed grave markers here now as well. I mentioned the anonymous dead yesterday. A lot of these wee stones here, they relate to the anonymous dead as well, in that families would have erected those stones and they would have known who was buried there, but without the cash, somebody's socks, somebody's woolen socks, without the cash to pay for somebody to carve or to cut lettering onto the stones, then you'd have to remember where your people were buried. You'd know where your people were buried. There's a gent over there looking after a grave. I'll stay away from him. And now we're going to walk over to the more modern section. Crow with a beak full of leaves for some reason. Farrels, please do not walk on graves. Yeah, these are 19th century over here as well. He designed and cast these station plaques, so lovely, to the memory of William O'Callaghan, who died October 1982. The stations of the cross are presented by the parishioners of Youghal in memory of their deceased parents, relatives and friends. People in Ireland constantly enact different remembrances and different religious events in graveyards, because it's a way of staying in touch, I think, with their own people. There, look, section G. So we're in, I think, was it 6 or 4 panels of graves over here, and the corner one is the one that we're interested in. Where we were yesterday was very much a rural famine graveyard. It started as a famine graveyard. Now I mentioned, when I was chatting yesterday, I mentioned a book, Desperate Legacies. Now I said it was produced by the County Library Service, but that was a mistake. It was of course it was the County Museum Service. Willie Fraher and a team in there produced that fantastic book, and I went home last night, and this morning I had another read of it, and It's a fantastic piece of work. Gives an awful lot of historic context, and when I reread that pulla where I was yesterday, those graves that we're looking to find with the LiDAR are certainly there was a big burst of burials there in the 1840s and the 1820s, but as the workhouse continued in use after the famine, so too did Slieve Green, and I suspect there was burials going on there for about 30 years or more after the graveyard, after the famine. Now this is new, I haven't seen this before. Plaques on the wall, Commonwealth War Grave on the wall for a Reardon. Okay, nice. And then here, may the Lord support us all the day long, the shades lengthen and the evening comes and the busy world is hushed. The fever of life is over. This is commemorating 1915, 1915, 1920, 1921, 1934. Now for the life of me I can't remember what this is commemorating. Is it people buried out of the workhouse in the babbies, 6 weeks old, older folk in their 70s? I'll have to look that up. And in this section here is what you'd see quite a lot, and what might be called famine graves. Beautifully kept. You can see the undulations in the ground. I'll go up and have a look up here. You see those dips and hollows, and there's an altar over beyond. So in the Christian faith, people do, there's part of a quay wall to the memory of our deceased relatives and exiles. Sheedy, Middleton, Joe Landy, Youghal. And one of the types of events people often hold mass inside in the graveyards. Now I can see just there's a dip, there's another dip beyond it. So I think we're looking at individual graves in here, and then in the middle maybe we're looking at larger graves. What I can't see are trench graves. Now I think this is actually a nice graveyard floor. So well kept that I think if we modelled that we'd actually be able to identify a rake of different graves. You see that darker there, you can see that there. From there to there. Where are we looking now? I think we're looking east, so the graves should be oriented that direction. So this is a common enough event if you start to trace famine graves. First thing you do is you go onto Google and you say famine graves and then the name of the place. And if you're lucky you will get a hit, and if you're very lucky then you will get a hit that'll say where local historians or historians, local community have actually gone and done the research and have established if a place really is a famine grave. Quite a lot of times I think what I found is that you can think you're in a Great Famine graveyard, but it might be relating, it might have started maybe 10 years later, a couple of years later. That's actually a grave slab, reused as an altar slab, I think. That's the top off a chest tomb. Beautifully done. It's an original one, alright, whereas the base isn't. You see IHS there on top. This is the altar, and they'd hold a mass here. Very often they'd hold a mass. It's a form of religious remembrance, but it's also then a means of fundraising so that they can have the money to look after the place. There's dips and hollows all around us here. There's a hollow there. There's another one there. Get your eye in on all those and you'll see, yeah, I think we can see rows of graves here. That's right. But not necessarily trench graves. The trench graves that we've seen tend to be, you know, very strongly 6 foot wide and linear. There's a hint of something here, kind of from there to there, maybe a bit bigger. I'm trying to get my eye in and see what what a famine grave might look like. The 1847 ones, the Great Famine overwhelm period. when they really did have to put lots of people into the burial ground. Okay, so when you do the search online and you come up with somebody who has already done the research and they've established, oh yeah, this is in 1840s, and they'll go through the Poor Law Union minutes and meetings and all those kind of records, 1910, 1911, and it's only then you can be sure if you have a famine graveyard, a Great Famine graveyard. And I suppose what I'm learning myself is that you really have to be careful. Yeah, 1899. So what are we seeing? We're seeing burials for older folk and younger people. I presume they're the people who were buried in here. And what we're seeing is that what I mentioned yesterday, what I like about doing this is that we're addressing the anonymous dead and helping to remember them. And I've been doing graveyards the last decade, but local communities are doing it long before us, and these are the kind of actions that you'll see from local communities. They've done the research, they've traced the names, and they then are commemorating them with these kind of monuments. So what I'm going to do now, I'll try and track this place. It's relating to Youghal Workhouse, which was officially opened in 1850, therefore it got the tail end of the Great Famine. I would expect that we will get Great Famine burials down here, and this is our most likely location, but it's by no means certain yet, or not based on the research I've done anyway. So I'll be looking into that in the coming weeks. And just to give you a sense of what it's like, here we are, a couple of acres of graves, private graves owned by families. In Ireland we buy a grave and then we reuse the grave, or until recently we used to reuse the grave on a generational basis. And here, as you can see, I was talking about rows yesterday, these are all rows of graves. Now these are organised as such. They would have been, when this graveyard was laid out, they would have actually made a map with each grave space having an identifier, having a row and a column identifier, almost like a spreadsheet. And then they would have been sold off on that basis. And you can see all different types of memorials and monuments that we have here. Just ordinary people, 20th century ones, you can tell them, all similar design, my own family buried in similar type things. Because from the 20th century it became more affordable that ordinary people could actually mark their graves with inscribed grave markers. Alright, we have a busy day ahead of us. I'm going to head back to the office, and the drone man, Paul Nessens, is coming down, and we're going looking at the drone data from Pulla graveyard later on. And my colleague Jacinta is coming down as well, and we're going to plan the next few months of field work. Hopefully as part of that process we'll be able to continue this approach of recording what we do and showing what it's like in our wee Irish graveyards.